Welcome, Spartans, to Halo TV Plus, part of Evolved, your home for Halo. I'm your host, Oran, and on Halo TV Plus, my guest and I recap Halo's original TV show, Halo the Series, and discuss its contents and unique canon within the Silver Timeline. Joining me again to discuss Episode 3 of Season 2, Visegrad, is Steve. Welcome back once again to the show.
Oh, it's been such a long time.
Such a long time. Podcast magic, in fact.
Yeah, well, you really hit the ground running with that intro the second time around, I tell you what.
Yeah, well, thank you. I just really wanted to kind of get us through it, and we got a lot to talk about. It's a good episode, or a pretty good episode, and then we got a lot of speculation to get to, because the next episode should be spicy. If you're a returning listener, you know this, but if you're just joining us, Halo TV Plus publishes 2 podcast episodes to accompany each Halo the Series episodes. This is the analysis episode where, in a moment, Steve and I will highlight key scenes from Visegrad that we believe need further analysis. We will break down the scene's effectiveness on screen, what it means for the overall story, as well as tie-ins from core canon knowledge for context. Earlier this week, we released our commentary episode for Visegrad, where we discussed the whole episode while watching it. If you missed it, I recommend listening to that episode first before listening to this analysis, but it's up to you. And I'm going to do some housekeeping before we dive right in. If you're new to the show, welcome. Halo TV Plus is part of Evolved that hosts a variety of other Halo podcast shows like Podcast Evolved, HCS Pro Talk, Mission Debrief, Builds with Blocks, and Halo Book Club. You can learn more about each of those shows on our website, evolvedhalo.com. Evolve hosts another show called I Would Have Been Your Podcast, which is our Patreon exclusive podcast for our subscribed Patreons. If you are not a patron and want to learn more, head over to patreon.com/HaloEvolved. Patrons also receive a variety of other exclusive rewards, such as early episodes, access to our original 18-song soundtrack, unique swag, access to a private Discord channel, and more. Shout out to all of our current subscribers. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on with all of your contributions. We love you guys. Thank you guys so much. All right, so Visegrad. I forgot to do the synopsis and stuff for the commentary, so I'm just going to do those real quick just so we have it. The synopsis for Visegrad is John and Silver Team embark into an unsanctioned mission. Liara, Quan, and Kessler must escape Soren's mutinous crew. Ackerson receives troubling intelligence from Cortana. The threat of attack forces Ackerson to make an irrevocable decision. The director is Craig Zisk. Runtime is 53 minutes 44 seconds, and it originally aired on Thursday, February 15th. So I'm going to throw it to you, Steve. Our first topic that I kind of want to bring back is the relationship between Silver Team and Ackerson. For the last 3 episodes now, Chief has been trying to warn Ackerson and his team, really, about the looming threat of the Covenant attacking Reach and kind of doing more of what they did on Sanctuary. And for the most part, his team members, Silver Team, has believed him and kind of gone on with what's going on. But this episode is a little bit of a turn where Silver Team now questions, what exactly is Chief going through. And so I just kind of wanted to start the conversation. Something that we see early on is right after they get brought back from the Visegrad relay, Keyes is kind of hammering into them about this is unsanctioned, you did not follow orders, all this kind of stuff, and his team is reacting kind of to that. So first, do you think the team is overreacting, or do you think this is a breaking point that maybe they've been slowly working their way to over these last 3 episodes?
So I think part of it is season 1, Chief was doing some questionable stuff and his team had his back. So you would think they would have his back again going into this, but the problem that we run into is that Chief lied to them when they went off to Visegrad. He didn't tell them what was going on. So as they're getting busted, they're only just hearing all this for the first time. And I think that's where the problem lies, is that he lied to them.
Yeah. And Riz, I think, is very outspoken. And then Kai even pulls Chief aside and is like, what is going on? like I am starting to question things because you are talking about seeing dead people, and Chief is he's just losing more and more people from his side. Like there's no more people really left in his court, so to speak, and he's just kind of getting more and more frustrated. I think I said this on the commentary episode. I did kind of like, I guess, that it's continuing to push all the way to that point to where Chief is kind of being completely alone, that all of his allies are questioning him and are, not really being a part of him anymore.
Yeah, because if everybody ends up going their separate ways, then it provides us the opportunity to have Chief by himself going into what could possibly be our Halo CE plotline.
Yes, that is true. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the rest of the season unfolds to kind of get to that point. But in terms of the near future, like it could be interesting to where when the Covenant finally do attack, maybe Chief and Kai and everyone, they're all on different parts of Reach or Reach City, and now they have to kind of like find each other and come back and then try to plan a counterattack after being, separated for so long. Maybe that's something that they have to kind of overcome and do, because maybe Riz is helping out Lewis and the healer, and Kai is over maybe doing Ackerson stuff, and Vanek is eating his sandwich.
Yeah, well, and this does kind of finally sort of bring an answer to that question of all those scenes we saw in trailers of them fighting without their armor. Because right now, at the end of this episode, the shit just hit the fan and nobody has their armor while they're all out spread across Reach City doing various things. Chief's off in a church. Riz is off with Lewis at his house. Vanek is back at base, but he's like just sitting down by himself doing the thing. And Kai was just talking to Ackerson briefly beforehand. She might be around base. She might not be. We're not really sure.
But she also wanted to do, and I remember, I guess we could talk about that scene, because that scene ends with her talking with Ackerson, like, what do you want me to do? And the whole basis of that scene is that Kai can't just sit around. She has to do something. She wants to be proactive, and that if Chief is the problem, then she wants Ackerson
stop punishing me because he's fucking up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, reinstate me, allow me to do something and be purposeful and all that. And so I could see Ackerson telling her, okay, well, I'm leaving because the Covenant are coming.
He's like, I got a plan I'm going to work on. You come with me.
Or maybe he took her. That would be interesting.
We could have that going on. I'll have to run that clip back, and we'll have to look really closely in the background to see if it's blurred out, see if there's a possibility that she's sitting there in the background as he's taking off. They did really set that up. Yeah. I initially wasn't thinking that Kai was going to go off and be the one doing the Spartan 3 thing, but it seems like that's the direction that they're setting up.
I think David and Aaron, both of them, had that prediction, and I am all for it. I think it would be a great role for her to assume, and it would doing it that early, like if she left with him to where now everything is hitting the fan, and then you basically just have these 3 Spartans, and Kai goes with Ackerson, presumably to Onyx, to get the Spartan 3s, then she can now be Kurt, do the whole song and dance, and then come back to Reach to try to save them or something like that.
Yeah, initially, the only reason I wasn't really thinking about Kai going off and doing the Spartan 3 training was because we know how Onyx ends in the core canon, and I don't see them getting rid of Kai with her doing the whole sacrifice the way Kurt does. I saw her going more the way of getting critically injured, clinically killed, ending up in the cryo tube in what would be the equivalent of Pillar of Autumn going into the events of CE.
Well, that kind of sounds a little bit more of like Kelly in the end of First Strike.
Well, I still think it can still end up happening that way. If she goes off to train the Spartan 3s now, and then we get her coming back with the Spartan 3s, and then that all goes sideways, and then that's when she gets hurt and ends up needing cryotube, etc., etc.
Yeah. I mean, there's different things in characters they can combine to make Kai. So I think there's a lot of flexibility that the showrunners and people can do.
I think it's fun that we have that, though. That we have a couple different threads that they could possibly go, and using the knowledge of the lore that we have, it's kind of a fun little guessing game to see like which of these things are they going to do with this character, because there are a couple that they could do that could still be quote unquote right.
Yes. No, this kind of like hodgepodge mix and match sort of like guessing game is really exciting. And yeah, I think it'd be very cool to kind of take people into those directions and put them in there. Because I think that they can even, Vanek or Riz, like if one of them maybe bites the bullet, they could do something similar, like the Kurt sacrifice.
I see Vanek doing the George sacrifice.
I was going to get to that. He could be the George sacrifice from Long Night of Solace. They could even be the Sam sacrifice for when that mission happened back when they were kids. Like there can be those types of parallels as well.
You mentioned last episode when we were talking about sets, the Covenant ship set we were talking about a little bit. And if we know we're getting a Covenant ship set, I'm leaning more towards the fact that it's going to be some sort of battle plan scene rather than just like a Covenant dialogue scene where they're talking to each other to set up some sort of plan. I think we're going to actually see some combat on a Covenant ship. So I'm thinking that Silver Team somehow ends up there and Vanek has to do the whole sacrifice thing, and then they end up back on Reach. I saw Riz as the cat of the situation since they got her with the messed up arm thing going on right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be similar to that sort of plot thread. I can see like they evacuate Reach, the planet, because it just gets so destroyed, but there's still a space naval battle that needs to happen. And in that sort of environment is when Silver Team can then infiltrate a Covenant corvette or some other Covenant ship and take the battle to them and, do whatever they do to get whatever, maybe they have to get the artifact back since the artifact is presumably taken. So that's what that mission is kind of all about if they learn that. And then in so doing that, maybe one of the Spartans die, like George or something. Or not George, Vanek.
Oh, that brings up an important question. So if we don't have Cortana right now and they have to go get the artifact, who's the one that takes the artifact? Because Chief can't do it now.
That's right. It would have
Chief
to be...
Chief can't do it now. If Vanek sacrifices himself, that means Kai and Riz either have to be with him or he has to have Cortana back by then. Does he get Cortana back as soon as he gets back to base as the shit's hitting the fan?
Yeah, a lot of different scenarios and possibilities.
Their armor's racked up. What does that mean for us as the audience? Does that mean that they can't access their armor at all? Is it actually locked up without their access, or do they just have to go back to their locker and open it up and gear up?
Yeah, I think it's just put on a rack. I don't think it's actually locked. But I mean, I guess it could be because like what's preventing them from just putting their armor back on? But I feel like that would be a plot point for the next episode of like they have to fight their way without armor back to fleet comms so then they can put their armor back on. I think you mentioned that like 10 minutes ago. So I think that's definitely something that they have to kind of cope with.
That's an easy like quarter to half an episode is them having to get to their gear. And then if they wanted to milk it for more, then they absolutely could be like, oh, we're locked out of the room where our armor is and we need to go find another way to get access. And that if they wanted to burn time, they could totally do that.
Yeah. All right. I want to pivot the conversation a little bit. Parangoski and Keyes were featured in this episode, and we learned something new about each of them. And wanted to talk about what we thought about those character choices and maybe where we see that going in the future episodes. Starting with Keyes. So in the beginning of the episode, he was very disciplinary for Silver Team, but he saved them from being court-martialed, but basically saying you ignored chain of command, you broke all of these regulations and rules, and kind of continued the narrative that like Ackerson has been pushing the 2 episodes prior. But then later on in the episode, we learn as the audience that Keyes was unaware of what was going on at the Visegrad relay. He saw that Cobalt Team has been killed and the Covenant are on Reach, and he does not have it. He disrespects Ackerson, speaks his mind, and just basically it's literally tells him to go fuck himself and then leaves.
It was such a good moment. I peed a little.
Do you like this sort of character change and momentum that's been going on, and where do you see this take Keyes into the next episode?
So I don't know if I'd call it a character change per se. I think it was a very logical chain of events, especially when you consider Keyes' previous experience with Chief in the show throughout the first season. He knows Chief is going through some stuff. He knows Chief has a bit of a history of seeing things, so to speak, in one way or another that he doesn't personally understand. So he has every reason to be questioning Chief's motives and stability right now. It's not like he didn't have a reason to wonder what's going on, but of course, the minute he finds out he was in the dark, he now has every reason to go, okay, so maybe he's not completely crazy because the other side of this that I was believing is now just completely out the window.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analysis. Like, to me anyway, it was gratifying to learn that like the Keyes that we know is still underneath there, and that he does care for humanity and the protection, and he just believed one thing, but then now that he knows what is the truth, he is 100% ready to back that horse and kind of continue on with it. And I was very impressed that he went as far as he did to kind of just disrespect Ackerson and all that. I think it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because presumably he would be staying on Reach to kind of lead the resistance and the war effort against the Covenant, while Ackerson just flies away. And I'm actually a little concerned for Keyes. Like, I would not be surprised if he doesn't make it out of this season. I don't know. He probably would survive next episode if the conflict continues on like we're predicting. But I could, even though he doesn't die that way in the core canon, it would be, I think, just as impactful with the way the show is going is if he loses to some degree while defending Reach.
So when I was like kind of shitpost brainstorming in our last episode about like what if Quan ends up playing the Miranda Keyes role of the games in the future, what if Captain Keyes, Admiral Keyes dies on Reach, Miranda Keyes ends up playing his role through the original Halo events, and then that's what leads to the silliness of Quan playing the Miranda Keyes type role later on. Because now everyone's just been pushed up a spot in line.
Yeah, I mean that's something.
Probable, no. Possible, I mean.
Oh yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think I mentioned this to Colin on episode 2's analysis that since we haven't seen Miranda, if Keyes were to die, then Miranda would step up, much like she did in the games after the events of Halo 1. Halo 2, she was very much involved with the UNSC's effort to go against the Covenant and fight back on Delta Halo, as well as back on Earth, and eventually to the Ark, where then she eventually dies. So I can also see that just as equally happening, that something happens on the next episode or whatever, and Miranda then now enters.
They just bring her through into the fold and have her run through the whole rest of the story and find a way to have her survive the events of the first Halo.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a lot for a character that we have had zero screen time of this whole season, but I almost feel like you need to remove some characters to make room for these other characters, since you have so many. And I mean, we've even seen it in some episodes, like some characters just won't get any screen time on that episode because we need to have more screen time for others. So right. I think once we eventually bring back Miranda, then her purpose will be a little bit more forward, and we'll be seeing more of her once she gets reintroduced. But until then, we have these other characters to kind of look at. So maybe once we start losing characters, we start gaining others.
Right. We just don't have the episode count to do proper and new character introductions in the time frame allotted. So it's a matter of how do they juggle the characters they have with the deaths that we kind of need to somewhat maintain the structure of the story going forward, if they're going to keep going the direction that they're going to bring it back in line with the core canon, so to speak.
And to kind of piggyback off Miranda, with each character, since it is a new season, to a varying level of degree, depending upon the character, there's been a little bit of like a soft sort of reset for them as we get into this new character or this new season. And we haven't had that yet with Miranda. And so once she eventually comes back into the fold, it'll be 6 months since we last saw her. There will be a little bit of a change, a little bit of a reset for her, that you can insert her into many different scenarios that I think we can then just believe off the bat, since this is the first time that we're seeing her. It's reintroducing her character into the show and into the story.
So we also had Quan and Lara now safe in the ship right at the end there, as Chief is talking to Perez and she's telling him what she heard coincidentally right before the explosions start. So what were Quan and Larry doing? Because they just had a moment where they were just like sitting there staring straight ahead, almost like they were hearing the same thing being broadcast. Like, is Perez telling Chief what's happening? And they're also broadcasting it live at that moment because they're about to hit.
No, I think
they just having a moment.
No, I think that's just the editing of just like, here is where all of our characters are at the end of the episode. And it's a pretty common thing that they do on this episode or on this show and just other shows.
The timing was really weird, the way that they were lined up, like not staring at anything else while they're sitting at a control panel as this last monologue is happening.
Yeah, I think it's just that the two of them just survived the crew that tried to pull a mutiny on Soren and his family. And so now it's just like the two of them are now just out in space. And because Quan left Kessler, now Liara is now like, okay, do we have to go out for Kessler? Like, where is Kessler going? Like, he was put on that ship.
He was going to Reach. They put him on the ship to Reach. Now they're going to end up going to Reach. This is them tying it all back together.
Oh, gosh.
So now they're going to... Okay, all right, now it's all going to make sense. They're going to come back to Reach while the airspace is getting invaded, and Quan's going to have to do some crazy pilot shit, and that's how she ends up in the fold and starts doing Miranda shit later on.
I mean...
It's so stupid, but they keep leaving little threads that can tie together to make this rope.
Oh man, that would be something. But also, isn't Quan like 16?
I don't know. Or she ends up doing, what if they make her like Echo 419? Because they just happen to end up like on a ship escaping from Reach to land on the equivalent of the Pillar of Autumn, and then they land on the Halo, and she happens to just be out flying the ship because she's like, I grabbed one of the ships and got off as the ship was going down, doing the Quan thing, just stealing a ship and running off, and then happening to be available.
You know what I kind of want? I want Quan... So because Halsey and Soren are kind of near each other, and Liara and Quan are looking for Soren, if those two pairs meet, and now we have this group of 4, it would be interesting if Quan then tells the audience finally, and in so doing tells Halsey and them, like, what was going on Madrigal, what she was protecting, and talks about the monitors and talks about this ancient monster that's been around for thousands and millions of years. That would be interesting, or potentially interesting, if Halsey really wants to hold on to that, wants to learn more of that. Maybe Quan has proof of that, and that can kind of have a more interesting B-plot with these characters now that they're together.
Yeah, they could go off and do their own little side story as a grouping. Maybe they go back to investigate what was left of Madrigal and find some weird Shield World parallel equivalent from some of our other novel stories.
Well, something else that we predicted was that the portal that was on Madrigal, since a monitor came out of it, means a monitor would have had to come from a Shield World or other type of installation. So maybe that portal can lead to Onyx or some other type of installation, or maybe just lead to Halo, which would be weird.
Just a Dyson sphere type situation where even if the planet thing that was around it is gone, it's still technically there. Because isn't that what happened with Onyx in the books? Is like the planet itself ended up getting blasted to smithereens, but the Dyson sphere still existed there, and they ended up accessing it later from another access point.
Something like that. I honestly don't really understand fully what Onyx and Trevelyan kind of how they work. The space magic is a little over my head, but it's something to that effect that there's like a protective dome over it to where it is able to protect itself, but also kind of rebuild itself, I think. But so to kind of keep on Soren and Halsey, what do we think that they're gonna do? Because I mean, I feel like it'd be interesting to see their dynamic, because Soren obviously has some dislike towards Halsey, but in this moment that the Covenant are invading, they're going to have to work together to some degree to get out and escape the holodeck prison. Like, do you think there's some like retribution coming?
I don't think there's some retribution coming, because of all of the Soren versus Halsey talk we've had so far, most of it hasn't really come from Soren. Like, he did have his talk about what happened to him, but like, he didn't really ever specifically talk about having it out for Halsey, as far as I can remember, versus what everyone else might say. Like, oh, she took your childhood from you. Like, I feel like everybody else would have put more pressure on him to do something about it than he would put on himself. He just wants to do his own thing.
I feel like in the first season, he didn't single out Halsey, but he was more so just talking about the program.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The program did him wrong. And so since she is responsible for the program, I can see him channeling that dislike and maybe hatred or whatever towards her now that he's physically in front of her for the first time in 20-something years.
Yeah, I don't see like any sort of rage-filled beatdown or anything coming. I see him just like yelling at her like a regular angry adult, and her being a snooty little shit and being manipulative the way she is, and then the shit hits the fan and they gotta obviously put it aside and get out of there, because that's what not stupid people would do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna let the Covenant kill you because I'm the one who has to kill you type of shit.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a little funny, but
we just get Soren and Halsey escaping buddy cop style. Basically, The Rock and Jason Statham in Fast and the Furious escaping the prison.
Yeah. Oh, man. That'd be wild. But yeah, I mean, anything could happen. It's still kind of early in their storylines, really, because Halsey hasn't really done anything this season, and Soren...
I need Soren in a full suit of armor again.
And I feel like that could happen.
Yeah, if Reach is gonna hit, if Reach is falling and everybody's there while the shit's hitting the fan, like they set it up to be right now, they've got to be at some sort of Oni installation already if Ackerson was popping in and out, because there's too much shit going on for him to be traveling particularly far to go tease Halsey.
I
think he had Cortana right in basically the next room. So
yeah.
Like, Soren also needs to get suited up with everybody else and do some Spartan shit.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what I want to see.
We got our space pirate stuff, but now we need to see him do some soldier shit.
Yeah, I'm kind of over the space pirate storyline. I thought I wanted it. I mentioned that at the beginning of the season, but I guess I was picturing more of like a Ryan Forge, Renegades, or what was the other book? Into the Fire? Is that what it was?
I don't know, but at this point, I need to see like 2 or 3 of them all linking up in one of the facilities as it's going down and start doing like some team tactics, getting behind cover, calling out positions, tag teaming forward. You know what I mean? I want to have them do some of that stuff we get in the books, covering each other's asses.
I also just need some crazy, impossible encounters that the Spartans are just able to overcome because they're Spartans.
Yeah.
It's like, there's just a wave of Covenant, and it's like, well, the only way to go through it is to kill them all, and like they just unleash.
Like that little bit of what we got from Chief in the first episode, some of that in the fog combat out of him. The quick reflex type stuff in close range, not even just the hand-to-hand, but like the quick flick of the shotgun up under the arm on some insanely fast reflex stuff. Like those little moments that come out real crispy. It's like, yeah, that's Spartan shit.
Yeah. No, I agree. I skipped over Parangoski. We learned this episode that she potentially is still in Oni leadership. She's not a private citizen like she claimed she was in episode 1. I'm very curious how this is going to go, because like something that I'm kind of been questioning pretty much since the last episode was that like Ackerson came into the picture as Halsey's replacement, but Admiral Keyes mentioned that he's the boss, and after this episode he's just basically running the show, almost as if he replaced Parangoski as well. So if Parangoski's still around, and I guess Lord Hood is just nowhere to be seen, like how I'm just really curious how these power dynamics are going to interplay with each other, because there seems to be a very loose hierarchy and chain of command between some of these characters. And so I've kind of just was left with more questions than real answers after Halsey's interaction with Chief this episode.
So for me, the way I kind of see it is there's always that sort of board of directors type of setup that runs everything that Oni does, even if there's a singular person like fully in charge of it. So we've got Parangovski and we've got Ackerson, who are both really high up, but they still have like that overall board to answer to. So I think they are both pulling strings. They are both in high up positions of power, but they're both being told to do different things. And I think Parangovski still has some weight she's swinging around. I think she's still got some ulterior motives.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, she's cooking up something. And it may not just be ramen.
God damn it. Eat your ramen. Just straight up telling Chief to eat ramen. Like, all right, it's funny when like he's at the table with Perez's family and he's all awkward, not eating anything. But Parangovski is trying to tell Chief to eat. Like, come on, you know he's not going to have that moment with you. Especially in this particular time.
What got me was when he's like, the Covenant are in here, or here. And she's like in the ramen? Like, come on. She's...
Especially because she has to know that Ackerson's pushing this whole propaganda thing. Like, she's already got to know the Covenant is there, and she's got to make a comment like that.
Yeah, that I was not too thrilled with that, but I don't know. I'm interested to see where she goes, because I think she was characterized and portrayed very well in season 1 in terms of core canon and what we got out of her, and really enjoyed her in season 1. So it seems that we're getting, again, a slightly new character, a new reimagining, a little bit of a reset with this new season. So I'm just kind of just really interested and curious to see how it's going to go going forward, and how her power dynamic gets sized up against all these other people, whether it's a board or some other division or something like that, because it's a little puzzling right now. But I don't know. We'll see what happens when the glassing beams start happening.
Yeah, and I mean, hell, if this show was a little more of a comedy, they could have leaned really hard into Parangovski making that joke to Chief, like, oh, Covenant's in the ramen, and then 20 minutes later, and then the church blowing up. Like, that couldn't have not, that was not long at all after that happened. Chief went right from there to Perez, didn't he?
Yeah.
He went straight from Parangovski
to Perez. He went from there to her house, and then
she wasn't
presumably
there.
To the church. So there was...
What, maybe a half an hour to an hour of him traveling around.
He just probably walks around everywhere. So, yeah, give him probably an hour, and he can be wherever.
Like, you know he's not running when he's just looking to talk, but I'm sure he can deduce where locations are pretty quickly, so he ain't getting lost in the city, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He's like, I know where she lives. Oh, they probably said she's at the church. He knows how to find a church easy enough.
Yeah, he just pumps in Spartan maps, you know?
They spend 5 minutes talking, and then boom. Oh man, Paragovsky's got to feel like shit after that. Man, I shouldn't have said nothing.
Oops.
I shouldn't have made that stupid ass ramen joke. Damn it, where's Ackerson?
Oh, he left. Joke's on me, I'm stuck here now.
And then she becomes reliant on Halsey once again to get her ass off of Reach.
I mean, or not. I'm telling someone had. So let's get into that. Who do we think someone dies next episode?
I think a lot of people die next episode, but who do we care about that dies?
Yeah, so people en masse die next episode, but what about our named characters? Do you think anyone bites the bullet, or do you think they save them, or bites the glassing beam?
I don't know. So I guess we'll start from the top of the hierarchy of center screen. So like Silver Team, obviously Silver Team ain't eating it quite this early. Like even if they want to kill somebody off Halo Reach style real quick early on, like I don't think this is going to be the way it happens. Even Riz, like I think they're all going to make that at least a little bit farther on before any of them start to get the shadow of death leaning over them.
I feel like episode 7 is the earliest that a Silver Team member dies, if any.
Maybe. I don't know, 8 episodes, 6 or 7. I don't know if I commit to 7.
I feel like it has to be either Thermopylae or Halo, which is 7 or 8. Thermopylae just sounds like you're just begging to kill off a Spartan.
You're right, but on the same time, like in Halo Reach, we had them spaced out throughout the whole campaign, so someone was dying pretty early on. True. So that's why I'm torn. I wouldn't commit to saying 7 as the first time we see one of Silver go out, depending on which way they want to follow it. But I wouldn't commit to saying 6 for sure either, because it could go either way. They could either wait till the last second and make it super dramatic, or they could just start hitting us hard and fast one after another and start ripping people away. But I don't think Silver Team goes next episode. I don't think Halsey or Soren go next episode. Maybe one of the people that Riz was with, Lewis or his partner or something, maybe they get hit in an explosion and he's like tells Riz, Lewis, do what your heart says, and she's like, I'm gonna go fight and be a Spartan. Forget this half in, half out shit. Whether I'm hurting or not, I'm gonna go fight, and that's what gets her back with Silver Team. But one of them dies or something. Maybe that they get rid of people we don't quite care so much about, like background characters, real quick. Yeah, they've introduced them, touched on them, and then they rip them away.
That could work. I mean, I would feel it. I mean, I would be sad if Lewis died.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Wise old blind Spartan, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Potential character to come back in the future, you know what I'm saying, is they like to reach back and pull washout Spartans in the future. Who else do we have as far as, like, secondary characters? We don't think Quan and Lara are going to go that early, right? They still have some shit they got to do.
No, they definitely have a lot of more. I mean, honestly, I thought Lara might die this episode. Like, there was a moment where I thought it actually happened, and I was like, "Wow, they did it." Maybe that's why she's getting so much screen time, so they can get it all out and then get rid of her. But no, they definitely have some plot armor because we still need to figure out what's going on with them.
What about Keyes? Does Keyes maybe go early? Does he die in the initial attack? And then that motivates Silver Team. He's like, no, go get your armor and fucking fight.
My gut tells me that he survives. However, I think he has the highest probability of dying.
Yeah.
Like the soonest of our kind of core characters, our like named ensemble of cast. I think he is definitely the most at risk.
Absolutely, because if not now, then later for him.
Right.
I think for sure he doesn't see the future. Like, he doesn't see past the events of the original, the first Halo we see. I think at least that.
Yeah, I think Keyes definitely is on the chopping block by the end of the season.
I don't think Hood shows up and gets hit. I think he's off doing some other shit. Parangovsky's got to survive. She's got plenty more manipulation and crazy stuff to do.
Yeah, I feel like I would be more sad or impacted if she died last season than if she were to die right now. Like, because I feel like her character has regressed a little bit after this ramen episode. So they need to rebuild her a little bit.
So, like, we know Chief isn't going to die, right? He's with Perez. We're sure she's not going to go because we've seen footage of her in the trailers past this point. What about her family? Maybe her family gets hit?
Oh, that could be interesting. And, like, there's a nice tender moment of her mom, like, in the rubble of her, like, home. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I told you the devil follows that Spartan.
Yeah, something like that. That would be great.
Something like that.
Because, like, we're definitely, we have the shit hitting the fan now. We have explosions going off, but it needs to mean something. They got to take some people away. But too many of these people still have stuff that they have to do. And there's too much stuff to still be done for them to take too many of these people away that have to do the things.
I agree.
Who else do we have left? Who else do we have left to pick from?
That's basically it. I mean, there's McKee, but she's not going to die.
No. Oh, man.
Or at least, like, next episode. I mean, they could try to do another bait. But we need to do something with McKee.
Does she die through the events of Fall of Reach, or do we see her getting chased all the way to the Halo?
I feel like she goes all the way to the Halo.
And then it's a race to the index, and a race to using the index, and then a race to firing or canceling the ring.
I think that's very possible. I feel like she can be very involved with the firing of the rings when we eventually get to that point. She's basically the embodiment of the prophets.
I get it for, like, production reasons, and I also get the fact that they've set this character up, they've set the actress up, and, like, maybe they've invested in trying to keep the character around one way or another. That's the best way I could see them doing it.
Yeah.
Who else dies in the next episode? Do we see any Covenant deaths in the next episode? Do we actually see it? No, I think that's a good question. Do we get to see any actual combat? Or do they just tease us with buildings crumbling and explosions in the background for an entire episode before we get any real fighting?
No, I think we have Covenant on the ground. Because like you said, the Spartans aren't in their armor. And so I feel like, yes, they could just be jumping left and right, avoiding explosions, but
just in a rush to get back to their gear, not actually fighting.
But I mean, I guess that's a really good question, because if the Covenant are glassing the planet, why would they send infantry down to fight the humans?
I don't think that explosion was a glassing, because don't forget, we brought up, where's the little relic?
That is true.
Where's the small artifact? The small artifact is at FleetCom. They can't glass the planet until they get that artifact from FleetCom. That's the whole point, because they already just came and grabbed the large artifact, and we already learned that they need both of them.
So maybe that explosion is McKee leading a force back to FleetCom, since she was there last episode or last season.
They learned from the comm relays that they can hack back through the network or something and figure out where orders are coming from, and they traced it all the way back to Reach, got to the comm relay on Reach, used that to locate FleetCom, and that's their preliminary strike force, and they're going to set off detonations in the city and start distractions out in the city, so that way everyone's trying to defend the city while McKee and her team try to break into FleetCom and take the small artifact. And then Silver Team's got a race to stop her, and that's how Chief gets back with Cortana, because Cortana's right with the small artifact.
Yeah. That's so much that they need to do in one episode. There's no way.
I don't think it'll all happen in one episode.
That's what I mean.
think that'll be the spread.
That's a lot that they have to do, so they're going to stretch it out. Like, I think that's just more justification to not cram it into one episode, and why they should have filtered some things into this one.
I'm just trying to figure out how we hit all these bullet points. Because all these characters have places that they need to go, right? We know, at the very least, Cortana's got to make it off. The artifact has to make it off, and Chief has to make it off. And those 3 points are, like, 2 of them are spread out right now, but a third party has to bring them together. The Covenant party has to be what brings them together. Because Chief's not just going to walk in and take Cortana and take the artifact and be like, I have to go find the Halo now, everybody, bye.
Well, the translation that Perez says something on the effect of, like, the death of the demon will pave the way to the sacred ring. Something to that effect.
Yeah. It was still their whole, like, you should be thankful that you're getting slaughtered on our religious quest, and on the way, the demon is going down too.
Yeah.
they called Chief out specifically on like some fucking Dragon Ball Z shit where the villain shows up and it's like, people of Earth, bring forth your greatest fighter.
Nice. All right. Any other final thoughts before we wrap up?
I mean,
it's a lot. I'm liking a lot of this speculation juiciness. I'm very, very interested to see how it all pans out next week.
Yeah, it's crazy because we have the core canon that we're trying to follow or hoping that they'll follow, and they could still go a completely different direction with all of this too. They could do all sorts of stuff that makes no sense whatsoever and leaves us scratching our heads. I mean, I would like to think not. This season is providing promising at this point. You know, nothing's perfect, but
yeah,
it's tough to say. I think we've picked through with a pretty fine-tooth comb at this point.
Okay.
We got poll questions.
Poll questions. Yeah, do you want to say them?
Community.
Do you want to say them on the air, or do you want to just post them on?
Or how about we'll ask one. We'll ask about Vanek's pouch. What do we think was in Vanek's bag?
Yeah. What was in Vanek's pouch? I think it was a sandwich. I think it was his lunch that he made at his quarters. Brought it to work, and he's just gonna be snacking on some lunch.
I think it's either that or maybe it's like some sort of souvenir or thing like an animal, because we got that little bit about him watching programs and liking animals. Like maybe he opens up and it's a little stuffed animal or something silly just because he's like, I'm on punishment, so I'm just going to sit here and behave and do what I'm supposed to do and not touch my gear. And he's just like, I have a moment, I'm going to look at my little stuff. It's like something silly like that. Who knows? I wonder what people would come up with before we actually get to see. If we get to see, watch, they'll just not show it again. They'll never hint at it.
Yeah. They'll never bring it back. I don't know. They could start the next episode, I mean, within the next, 15 minutes of it starting, and he could be playing with a stuffed animal or reading an animal book or
close shot of him and then chewing on a burger, and then the sirens start blaring.
Exactly.
With some like silly, relaxing music in the background right before the alarms start going off.
Yeah. That's our guy, Vanek. Our hero.
A documentary on his screen, like on a little tablet on the table.
There you go. Learning about those nature programs. All right. Well, let's wrap this up, my friend.
Let's do it.
It's been quite adventurous. Thank you for joining me for this analysis episode of Visegrad.
Absolutely. It's been super fun.
Yep. I will hit you up when we finish the season for some breakdowns and analysis of the whole season once we get to that point later in the next couple of months. Thank you, listeners, for joining us as well for this episode of Halo TV Plus. Halo the series premieres exclusively on Paramount Plus every Thursday. If you're interested, Alex Waitford releases his Silver Debriefing blog posts on Halo Waypoint that recaps the story of each episode in detail and serves as a hub for additional show-related content. You can head over to Halo Waypoint and check out those articles, and he also provides some insight into core canon-related tie-ins. They're pretty interesting. They're pretty quick reads, and you can head over to Halo Waypoint to check it out. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, you can find every episode of all of the shows that Evolved produces on our website, evolvedhalo.com. Also, don't forget to check out our social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and TikTok. Once again, another shout out to all of our patrons for supporting Evolved and making all of our shows possible. Head over to patreon.com/HaloEvolved to learn more. If you like this show, rate it, leave a review. I greatly appreciate all the feedback that we receive from our listeners to improve the quality of our shows. And lastly, you can email us and leave us a voicemail if you want to talk about this episode or a previous one. You can email us at podcastevolved@gmail.com or call us on our Google number 205-EVOLVED, which is 205-386-5833. And with that, I have been your host, Oran, and until next time, evolve.